Welcome to our webinar where we'll explore the skills students and even teachers will need for the future. I'm Karen Bonanno, the founder and managing director for EduWebinar, and I will be your host and presenter for this broadcast. I have been a teacher librarian, head of department, acting deputy principal, regional advisor and education officer. I have 35 years experience working in the K-12 education sector, and in particular with professional associations at the state, national and international level. Before I begin, just cover some basic housekeeping matters here, that the views that I express and the material that I share with you are my background research and gathering of information and sharing with you, and what I would encourage you to do is to take this and then explore things a little bit further and see how it applies or how it can be applied to your particular situation. The other aspect as well is that EduWebinar Proprietary Limited does not give permission for any capture, recording or reproduction of this webinar in any format unless you have prior permission from us to do so. It's certainly a very different world of work that our young people are entering compared to the entry of the workforce that we experienced. They are all part of an increasingly global and competitive world. Okay, we're seeing developing nations that are kind of leapfrogging ahead. We're seeing developed countries are rethinking their industries and how they will generate national income to sustain their country. In this particular report that was published in 2006, we can see these early stages of concern, and we see that there's indicating that for new employees who have a 4-year college degree, that they do have excellent basic and applied skills. So in this report, as I said, the 50% of the people who were surveyed said that young people are coming out of high school and they don't have those skills. And that was in 2006. Then we move on to a little bit later, like 6 years later, and we find that a similar problem is still evident. And in fact, there is a grave concern that there is 75 million young people globally who are unemployed. We've got 6 years on from the previous report, and we've still got employers saying the main reason for the problem is that these entry-level vacancies are there because of the lack of relevant work readiness skills. And in that report, it indicates that worldwide young people are 3 times more likely than their parents to be out of work. They identify in 9 countries that participated in the report that there is a critical skills shortage, and those 9 countries are a mix of developing and developed. There's Brazil, Germany, India, Mexico, Morocco, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom and United States. The previous report indicated 50% of employees said that there was a deficit of skills. In this report, it's improved marginally. 43% of employers surveyed agreed that they could not find enough skilled people to come in at that entry level, the people who are graduating out of high school. So there's a couple of challenges there that they propose, and that is that in education as well as in nations, that there are 2 things that need to be focused on: skill development and job creation. The focus for tonight is looking at how schools can develop those skills with students. Let's consider the skills that they're saying that these kids actually haven't got. And I don't think this is actually rocket science. I think it's fairly obvious to most of us. This is a report that was called about teens and the call to action for what these young people needed, that they're entering that workforce without the critical skills. And we see that the skills that are needed are going beyond the traditional academic skills. So it's going beyond the knowledge skills, as in knowledge of content and knowledge of actual learning areas. It's going into these other skills, which some may call soft skills, but some people would indicate that they're crucial skills, particularly the business owners. There are things here like the creativity and innovation, their ability to be critical thinkers and problem solvers, the ability to effectively communicate in this global environment and to collaborate worldwide. Then we've got the information, media and technology skills, and we know how rapidly technology changes, and it is a challenge for even us as adults to keep up with that. But you can see here they identify certain literacy skills and multiple literacy skills that students need. So in the broadcast for tonight, I'm going to look at, in this first part, addressing three questions. The first is, what are the skills that business owners are looking for? The second one is, what are the key drivers of change that identify key work skills? And then the third part is, what key strengths help to address future work skills? So we'll go through each of those. Very first point that I want to raise is actually from the work of Tony Wagner. And he has done a lot of research, a lot of interviews, in particular with industries about what skills they're saying they want. Now, this all started with him having a conversation on a plane, and the person who was sitting beside him was a president of a large US company. And the question he asked him was what qualities he most wanted in potential employees. And he was a little bit blown away at the time that they were not asking for technical skills, they were asking for deeper skills than that. And so the interview that he had was with Fortune 200 companies, companies like Cisco Systems, Dell, McKinsey and Company. And these survival skills, he's got 7 listed there. So if we think about the first one, the employers are saying that they need young people who've got strong analytical skills. They're people who need, who know how to chunk things down and how to analyse that information, and in particular who have a habit of asking good questions. And this is frequently mentioned, that the young people need to know how to engage in inquiry. They need to know how to test assumptions and not just automatically accept things as a given, but to ask good questions. The second one indicates that within a technologically driven world, that these young people are going to be looking at having virtual meetings and teleconferences and other environments where they're not necessarily going to be in the same room and the same office, that they will be involved in these virtual meetings working in what is termed net clusters. Now, when we talk about net clusters in this context, it's that the people who are in that cluster have a certain mix of skills that are brought together to undertake a particular project. So in this collaborative environment, they need to also develop trust and to lead by influence through the skills that they share and the respect that they have for each other. The third one is looking at agility and adaptability. In other words, being responsive to the changes, to know how to deal with ambiguity and to learn on the fly, to be agile in what's happening and to be able to manage certain disruptions and be flexible in how they do that, and to know that they can change the direction and path fairly easily through that process. The fourth one is looking at the self-directed approach here, that they are looking for people who can come up with creative solutions, and that's because of the highly competitive work environment that they're in, that they can seek out new opportunities and give suggestions of new ideas and different strategies, and that they need to be achievement-oriented and have that drive to really get engaged with the business and being willing to be succinct in what they're doing. The effect of oral and written communication, I don't think is any surprise, because what we've got there is we have technology now which is providing different ways that we can be concise in the way that we communicate, that it is also in this global environment needing to work across cultures, so we need to know how to be sensitive in our communication. One of the points that they raise is that the individual needs to be clear and concise. They've got, the first 60 seconds to make an impact and to beat their competitor, to draw in people who are engaging in business. The sixth one, again, is not a surprise there. It's dealing with the information flow, knowing how to access information, knowing how to evaluate it within the context of the business that they're working in, and getting that information from multiple sources, knowing how to put together that detail and present it for decisions to be made for the benefit of the company and organisation. And the last one is bringing in that left and right brain. And in the article that Tony Wagner refers to, he says it's like kind of high concept, high touch. So it's a capacity to see patterns and opportunities to create artistic and emotional beauty, and at the same time to look at the subtleties of how people may buy something on emotion, not necessarily the factual details that are there. And so it's really looking at how they can take things and recreate them so that they become pleasing and satisfying to the customer. So there's certainly different skills to what we would say would be taught within a particular community. Feeding into this are a number of key drivers and trends. Now these graphics come from this particular report, which I think you would be aware is referred to a number of times, and you've probably seen this particular report. Now there are 6 trends that are evident in the report, but I'm just going to focus on 4 of them as the key drivers of the need for these new skills to be developed. So let's just have a look at each of these to start with. The very first one is this concept of being globally connected. And in this environment, everybody is not located in the same geographical zone. They can be in all different locations. So there's no one country now that holds a monopoly of job creation or work dominance. That we see a lot of the outsourcing, and we see a lot of that. Some of you may have heard about Odesk or Rent-A-Coda, whereby you set up a project and you get people who are contracted to program a particular software program. There's Elance, there's Guru.com, and then there are various tools available that people can manage these people across diverse geographical locations like Basecamp HQ. So what we've got is organisations outsourcing globally their customer service, their IT support, and they need to be doing this to remain competitive. And I don't think it would be a surprise to you that this is evident in our society today, that the impact is that it then means that anyone can work and learn and study wherever and whenever they want. And this is the globally connected world. And as a result of that, we have developing countries are rising ahead because they are accessing the training and they have the resources and at a lower cost, but they're able to provide the service. The trend that we see happening then is this one here, the integration of online, hybrid and collaborative learning. So this blended learning environment is the implication of this globally connected world. And the follow-on from that is it means that the skills that our students are going to need is to be able to collaborate across global environments and to be equipped with those digital literacy capabilities, the cultural sensitivity, the ability to organise and analyse information and be able to apply that to the development of the company for its growth. The next one is what we would call the super-structured organisation. And what this means is we have companies now that are multi-layered, and the teams may come from different backgrounds and different geographical locations. So it means that it's not just limited to one location, and it's not just using the knowledge and skills of those within the organisation. It's outsourcing and gaining the knowledge and capability of other people. A lot of you would have heard of the term of crowdsourcing, whereby someone will put something out and they will get a lot of other people to have input into the development of that. For example, games or apps development. Someone will build it and then they will get other users and other people to test it in a beta environment and give feedback so that they can continue to refine that to remain at that competitive edge. In this superstructured organisation, the element of social media connectivity comes in, that not only are they getting the information from the people with whom they connect in a virtual meeting or in a net cluster environment, but they're getting that information from monitoring what's happening out there in the social media environment. And as I said, they're working beyond the boundaries of the organisation because they need to tap into the resources of other people. The trend there that we see is that we have the need for authentic learning experiences for our students to be able to gain these skills, to know what it is to work within these environments, to look at the complex real-life issues, to look at the crossover between their world and their school experience. The implication is that it means that we have to build in some of that authentic learning experiences in a busy curriculum. But it's necessary to be able to get these kids to know how to engage in the problem and project and challenge and inquiry-based learning environments. Again, we see the need for collaboration, and we also need that they know how to work with others, and they need to know how to trust other people and to rely on sort of the grit mentality of knowing that they may need to, because they don't see someone face to face, they have to trust that this person is working with them to achieve the ultimate result. So that needs the equipping of the social emotional intelligence. The next one is the new media ecology. And what this means is that in this day and age, we have so many emerging technologies that can be used to enhance the communication and to look at how businesses get their information out there about their products and how they can, to a certain extent, get people involved in knowing what it is that they're doing through all this multimodal method of communication. And we see it through things like video production, digital animation, augmented reality, gaming, media editing. Again, lots of these things that we see students engaging in some of the web tools that they are beginning to use. And there is that virtual networking to get that happening. What we see is a trend towards ambiguity of information, that what we have today may not necessarily be the same as tomorrow, that decisions are being made, there's this shifting ground, people are responding to information as it flows through, and they need to be on top of that. They need to know how to be not only consumers of that flow of information, but also how to be creators of that. And the implications, again, that are identified in this future skills report is that there needs to be this increased collaborative creativity, that people need to draw together, because not everybody will have the specified skills, that they will be like a big jigsaw puzzle. They might have certain skills, but they need to link into others through this whole new media environment to get that information that they need. And again, it's the equipping with the digital literacy capabilities, in particular that oral and written communication beyond what is experienced in the past, and the multiple ways to tell a story, to get the customer to engage and to help that organisation stay at that competitive edge. And the last one, I think, is no surprise to us when we look at what's happening in the manufacturing world around some of the developed countries, that we're seeing a lot of the movement towards removing the human element, and anything that can be automated or anything where a robot can be used or artificial intelligence can be applied. We've got these smart machines coming into offices and factories and even into our homes. You know, our refrigerator can do certain smart things now that it couldn't do once. I mean, its core job decades ago was just to preserve our food, but now we've got these smart machines that are even in our homes. And so we see it in our home, but we see it across the medical profession, we see it across manufacturing and production, we see it across security surveillance. You know, we just need to walk out our front door and we are consciously aware that the smart machine is taking on some of the roles that humans originally were involved in. And what it is, it's kind of smarter, needing to be smarter and faster for longer periods of time to keep competitive. And a human being can't do that on a 24/7, 365 cycle. So we have this need then for the human-machine collaboration and codependence, that the human is the thinker and the creator and the machine is the doer. So the trend that we've seen happening in education is this need for deeper learning approaches. It's not going to be sustainable just to rely on technical skills or simple processes. There needs to be some deeper things, and of course the implication then is rethinking the human element. And in the report they kind of raise, well, what is the role of the teacher? Is there a need for the teacher? And this is where we need to be thinking about, well, what are the unique capabilities of a human compared to a machine? So there are some of the drivers and the trends and some of the implications of what's happening. And this is a graphic from that particular report. And you can see there's a link down there. Now, with these particular work skills, what we've got happening is then some kind of future proficiencies are required. So down this side here, I've got the critical survival skills that Wagner identifies, and the 7 of them are there. In the future work skills, what we've just looked at is the trends and the drivers. Within that report, what it identifies are the actual skills. Now, what I've done here and what June and I did in our article, we cross-mapped these across, and we've actually gathered other skills that have been identified through educational agencies but also in other business environments. But here's the major focus of these are the work skills that are identified and how they can link to these survival skills. In this first one with the sense-making and design mindset, what needs to happen here is that there has to be that focus on higher level thinking, and particularly the design thinking concept, whereby someone takes a task and they look at the work processes and they develop some prototypes and they refine them until they get to solving the particular problem. And so it means that there is this engagement of seeking out deeper meaning and being able to identify specifically what needs to be happening to get that problem solved, but also to achieve the end result in a reasonable period of time at minimal cost. With the next couple that are there, the social intelligence and virtual collaboration, again, we've got an ability here, or the need for the ability for people to connect and to develop relationships of trust, to know how to deal with their feelings and emotions within a global environment, to be sensitive to other cultures, and to look at the vital aspect here, and that is that each of the people that are involved are unique, and they're bringing to the table unique capabilities and skills that are combined then in that collaborative environment to achieve what that organisation wants. In this next one, which looks at agility and adaptability as a survival skill, this is what the future work skills refers to as transdisciplinary. Now, what it means here is that the global problems that are out there are far too complex for one person to solve. And anyone who's got specialist skills needs to be able to reach out to other people to help them to deal with some of those complex problems. In the report, they refer to the ideal worker as being T-shaped. Now, what that means is with the T, the vertical upright, that is reflected as the deep understanding in at least one field, that specialist attention or that specialist knowledge that someone has. And the T, the kind of crossbar along the top, is that they also need to be able to have the ability to talk with other people in a language across a range of different content areas in a broader sense, not specifically, but they need to be able to ask the right questions of someone else who has the specialist skill. And this way they're saying that by doing this they have this agility to be able to respond to various changes that are happening and to be able to be flexible and adapt how they're going to go. In the initiative and entrepreneurship, it's looking at the fact that there is so much information out there, but they need to be able to filter through that and grab what is important and look at how they can maximize that for the particular company that they're working for. How they can really get in and minimize the amount of noise of information and be able to get that higher quality of detail that they need and to apply that in a creative way within the particular industry. With the effective communication, I've referred to this before about this cross-cultural competency, that there is the need for that ability to be able to be comfortable in different cultural settings and to be sensitive. So having the linguistic skills, but also to know how to respond, how to be able to deal with diverse groups, because it may well be that within their net cluster or within their group, their team that they're working with, there could be a combination of different ages, different skills, different work ethics, and so there needs to be these future skills of knowing how to work across those culturally diverse environments. The analysing and accessing information deals with the new media literacy and the computational thinking. So let's look at both of these. The new media literacy is looking at that ability to be critical and to analyse and assess and develop content that's going to be able to be leveraged to be able to be persuasive in the communication that they're going to get people to engage in their business. So it deals with the digital fluency aspect here, the ability to critically read, to assess that information, to put it together and to create their own information that they will be able to communicate out. The computational thinking is looking at how do you manage that vast amount of data. So the whole data mining aspect is there, that we've got these huge amounts of data and computational thinking skills need to be able to make sense of that big data. How do we crunch it down? How do we analyse it? How do we utilise the technology to be able to get that crucial information that we're needing to be able to make decisions? And then the last part is about dealing with this novel and adaptive thinking. And that means there has to be an element of curiosity there. They have to be a little bit inquisitive about what they are after. And there is going to be this decline in the kind of middle skill white collar blue worker to people who are actually in the high skilled, high professional technical management organisations. So a movement from manual tasks to quite abstract tasks, which really, when we think about it, is all very challenging within our current educational context. And there would be a number of commentators who would say that our education system is broke, it's not working. But if we start to become aware of these new learning skills that are needed, we can look at how we can change our learning environments, how we can change that we engage with students, how they engage with information and resources, and so forth. So in this next part, this is what I'm wanting to focus on here, is looking at what types of learning spaces can we create and what type of activities can we get students engaged in that will help them to support skill development. What type of technologies are out there for EdTech adoption that are either current or coming. That's crucial, and the Horizon report will guide us a lot in this area. And then the next bit is the digital strategies that support that integration, or more so the embedding of the technology, so that students are actually using what they would use in an everyday environment to be able to learn, develop these skills so that they can engage better in the workforce, but definitely be at that level of employability for getting their job future. So the first thing that I want to share with you, and if you look down the bottom there on the left, there is a URL, and this is actually a report that is called Resource for Designing Technology-Rich Informed Learning Spaces. It's like a little bit long topic, but this document outlines a number of different processes and also the different type of spaces that we can have either within our schools or replicating some of the similarities that they would experience in a workplace. But we're already starting to see some of these kind of learning commons, research commons, makerspace design coming into schools. And this is where we can bring in these resources for the designing of these types of spaces. So the very first one is looking at getting spaces designed so that kids can focus on what it is that they're learning. In this image here, you'll see up the top we've got these whiteboards which become the separators in the room, or in this case it's glass that they're writing on, or perspex, walls. What we see in schools, we see tabletops that become whiteboards, and these are able to engage kids in the brainstorming process and hence the problem-solving areas that in individuals or groups they can get their detail down and they can start to use it as a way of capturing their thoughts and then developing the process through. Other areas that we've got is, group study areas where they can access the technology that they need, but the spaces are flexible enough where they can work together, that they're able to get access to the resources that they need as well as the tools, and they are able to focus on the particular tasks. And so we see different designs here of how that could be in maybe a school library environment, but also even in designing classrooms there could be a certain segment. Now here we've got the good old lab environment, but we still have those in certain segments of the schools where you've got a bank of computers that are sitting in a row. Now the idea here is that these can also be these media production areas to help the kids get their thoughts down to start with in that pre-production phase, which is part of the design thinking processes, that you still need to have access to the technology. You still need to have the learning spaces, but also the furniture that's flexible. It can be moved around so that the students can either be on their own and working, like you see here in this image, or they can be working together as a group. So we can get these spaces designed so that that's what it is. It's helping them to have the space to focus on what it is that they need to be doing. The next area that they talk about is the collaborative spaces. And in a number of school libraries that I've seen, that we've got the booth concept here, which has areas and facilities where they can access the technology, but they can be a little bit isolated and work in groups, or they can just work on their own devices and then connect in with other people in that space. So here you've got your laptops, your papers, your resources all together, and they can access the information and tools that they want. There's also too in the collaboration there is the brainstorming, that it's not necessarily needing to be on their own, that they can brainstorm as a group. Even from the early ages they can be guided and supported by the teacher to develop their brainstorming, and it's captured so they can all see it and engage in that. There's also the group study areas, semi and open. The presentation practice that we see in the bottom here, that this is where they can present a prototype or present an idea, get feedback from the rest of their peers, and then start to use that feedback to fine-tune what they're developing. Here we've got kind of learning commons areas where the tables are flexible enough that they can be moved around. Often what we see in some of the classrooms and school libraries, the furniture is actually on wheels, and so it can be easily moved around to create these flexible environments where the formal learning and the informal learning can take place. And we've got then these learning commons areas developing where they can look at integrating a whole lot of things and move around and change as the dynamics of the task and activity change as well. Then the next one they talk about is the create in this document. And they're spaces where the students will go away and either they will work individually or they will work as a team, and they will create their solution to the problem, or they will create their project, and they will develop this as the end result of their inquiry. They're asking of the questions, they could be solving a problem, they could be undertaking a particular activity. And so we've got these multimedia creative suites, and they can be in all different types of formats here, where there is sort of open computer labs, or there's spaces for activity. There's a mixture of fixed and flexible furniture. And, you know, if we look at the makerspace concept, which is evident here, it doesn't necessarily need to be makerspaces with all the high-end technology. It could be a makerspace that is more craft-oriented. And just recently in my email, I've been getting a lot of emails about the Maker Shop, where you can buy gifts for the holidays to engage. And it's not just dealing with 3D printers, it's also looking at paper craft, it's looking at all different types of craft that people can engage in as a holiday activity. But what ultimately is happening here is there's design and fabrication through a variety of media. And in here we can also include in this creating is the coding and gaming. And as you see here, there's, you know, different things happening here that these college students are engaging in. And in fact, right now during this week, we've got the Hour of Code happening worldwide, and there are millions of students who are engaging in the Hour of Code and involved in that creation process. The next learning design space that is referred to in the document is the sharing space, and this is where they're actually taking the time then to present to their peers or to others, or out into different environments where they have access to displays, or they have access to audio, or they have the ability to share with others in their class what they have found out about a particular topic or a particular issue. In this document, it also refers to the fact that within locations within the school, such as the school library, they called it access to service points, because it may well be that during this process that the students will need access to additional resources and information and technology, and they can gain that through accessing the service points within their school library to get access to the material and resources and maybe the technology that they need to be able to effectively do their presentation. So here in the sharing environment, they're also sharing the expertise and knowledge of the adults with whom they will interact in their learning space. And then within the school too, there are various locations that are considered to be socialising, where there's informal learning taking place. Now, admittedly, these images here are more of a college environment, but I have in some schools seen some of these spaces whereby there are places where they can sit out in open areas and exchange information informally and share that information, and basically just relax within these environments, but still be engaged with their peers in various locations. So if I take this further then and develop the previous table, what I've done here is I've got the survival skills from Wagner, entered here the future work skills under each of those, and then looked at the different learning spaces and how they connect up. So if we're looking at focusing and sharing, we're engaging students here in, they're getting their pre-production, they're getting the core elements that they need in that design thinking process. They're then sharing that so that they're solving that particular problem. We've got the collaboration and socialisation, the getting together, being conscious of other people and how they're operating and how they can interact with each other. So in this environment here, we can get things happening like mystery Skype, or various ways of connecting globally to help people connect with people in other countries and other classrooms, and so they're not just limited to the four walls of their classroom. The agility and the transdisciplinary, knowing that they have to focus specifically, but they also have to go out and be involved in creation processes with other people through that. Each of these, there's some repetition here, but you can see that these learning spaces and activities all can be addressed, or all can address these future workforce skills that are needed. And I'm sure that within your school you can see that you have some of these spaces either in initial stages of development or well formed if you've gone through any recent refurbishing over the last 12 months or couple of years. But this is basically what we've got here, is that we have spaces then where students can listen and read, and they can study, they can view, they can plan, they can get their thoughts together, they can share with others and brainstorm, and they can design, they can edit, they can produce, they can assist each other. And there's all different ways that we can engage students through that particular process. One way that we can do that is by looking at some of the key technologies and the different ways that they are being used. In this particular report, which is the 2004 Horizon Report for Higher Education, they have a table in there, and the reason why I've included it is because we're looking at the future workforce skills. We often find that what is happening in higher education has a flow back effect on what can be happening in schools. And so we see here that in the learning environment, we have in schools the personal learning environment spaces, and we have virtual remote labs or places where students can come and they can create, where they have access to tools and technology. We're seeing the movement towards students having access to different devices and in multiple formats, and they're accessing apps to be able to undertake their task. What we're probably not seeing, but in some areas we may, is the wearable technology. So that's why I've got that highlighted in a different colour. The wearable technology may be there if we think about, the physical education component. There could be the Fitbit, which is looking at falling into the Internet of Things. We've got some schools that are experimenting with Google Glasses. But in this case, for schools, it is something that is about 4 or 5 years away. In this column here with Internet, this is something that is starting to come into schools. The concept of cloud computing, whereby students are accessing the applications but also storing their content in locations that aren't on a server that's located in the school. There are some challenges here with schools in keeping data private, keeping the kids' credentials private. So that is a little bit of a challenge in this environment, but it is starting to move that way, that we're looking at developing that essential infrastructure to make life easier and replicating what they would experience in a workforce environment. The social media, of course, is prominent, not necessarily being accessed in schools, but definitely the students would be accessing this outside of the school environment. And so we need to be aware that there is this consumer consumption in social media that helps to develop these core skills of collaboration and working across different environments, developing those new social web-based skills that they need, that digital literacy and digital fluency. And then in the visualization, we have the development of the 3D printing and prototyping, which we will see starting to take shape, where students will develop something and they will get that feedback and they will go out and do some adjustments until they've actually got that. So we have this design thinking approach coming in. But these are the key technologies, and we are going to see them becoming more prominent within the school environment. But what is happening is that we are seeing these as key technologies that are also out there in the workforce. With the strategies that can be used in this environment, we're seeing that there are ways of using different devices and software to basically enrich the teaching and learning inside the classroom and also outside the classroom in formal and informal learning. For example, schools are engaging in looking seriously at the bring your own device, or providing multiple devices whether the students have iPad access or tablets, it is embedding these into the classroom so the students are using them and using them in a way whereby they are engaging more in the learning. The flipped classroom concept for that deeper level of teaching and learning that is required to get them to know that you can go out there and access and find the information, but it's developing those core skills that are dealing with the accessing, analysing information and engaging in the collaborative discussions that make it richer and deeper and finding relevant meaning for what they're learning. The games and gamification, and in there we'd put coding as part of that as well, maker spaces or fab labs, and these last two are going to be something that will be further down the track when we're looking at elements of, well, how do we maintain the digital portfolios that students develop over the years? How does that become part of their material that they would use to gain entry into the workforce, because they would be able to demonstrate all of these skills that they've developed. Location intelligence is another strategy that is probably not evident within schools, but definitely within businesses. You just need to be looking at going on the web, and the algorithms that sit behind the web are looking at location intelligence, so that the marketing that you experience through web searches is targeting you specifically, either where you're located or you according to your profile. So these latter part are not as evident and in schools, but definitely the top four are things that are starting to emerge in that environment. So if I go to looking at expanding that table a little bit further, what we've got now is the survival skills, the future work skills, the different learning spaces and activities that students would engage in, and then the type of technology and strategies, these rich resources that you would bring in and use it as part of your toolkit and repertoire to develop these crucial skills with the students. So really what we've got here is development of these particular areas in accessing the technology, but also utilising them within schools in different ways to engage the learner. And this quote here by John Seely Brown tends to sum things up in a way that we can design the physical spaces, the social spaces and the information space all together. What this does, it enhances the learning and it gets the learner to engage with the technology so that they will actually love working there, and they will start to learn with and from each other in this huge development of skills for students. So what I'd like to do is just see whether there's any questions that people have or any comments about, particularly if I go back to the previous slide, of how you may actually be doing or utilising some of this in your school already, or whether you're seeing that there is this shift towards addressing this creative tension that seems to exist between business and education, in that businesses are saying that we're getting students entering the workforce that don't have those critical skills, and education endeavouring to address that gap. Now, in closing for this webinar, what I want to do is take you and show you the article that June and I wrote. I made reference to it earlier that the content for the webinar was coming from this particular article, but what this article does, it takes you further into the content that provided the basis for this broadcast. In this particular article, June and I go into the research and we give you other resources that are there, interactive videos, references, so you can actually go deeper into this particular content. This is the link that you will need to go to be able to find that article, to download it. So please note that. Otherwise, I'll just show you out here on our blog that if you do need to, you can just go to our blog and go to Learning and Literacy for the Future, and you'll be able to access the article there and download it. So just to go through some of the elements to point out some additional information that will be of interest to you in this article, we referred to the Young Adult Literacy Service Forum report, whereby it was identifying that the students are really lacking these particular skills, and then we go into some further research and documentation coming from the Pew Research Centre, and included in that are a lot of interactive videos, so they are available here that you can view those, and also to some reference to some pre-reading articles that informed this direction that we were taking. Probably the most exciting part of the article is the table that collates both the educational perspective as well as the work business perspective. And in this we have the 21C report that identifies the skills, and these skills come from an educational agency that has been doing research into the particular skills, the 21st century learning skills that students need, and that comes from United Kingdom, Netherlands, Australia, the USA. This report here again is from an educational perspective, and it identifies those skills, and these are the ones that I was referring to, the Wagner survival skills, the future work skills of 2020, and this report here is from the UK, and it looks at skills for 2030. What we've endeavoured to do is map these across and look at the common terminology that is evident, but also look at some of the terms and some of the information and detail around that. And finally, in this column on the far left hand side, we've done this kind of meta overview of the skills that we see represent the mapping of these items that are here in this table. So we've identified these skills as being crucial for the new skill development, not only for students but also for teachers as well. And the reason why we've referred to teachers is because of some of the challenges that we've identified, and I'll just go down here. So in the challenges, we've indicated that the first challenge is making sure that the school has a sound pedagogical framework. And the reason is that in your school you need that learning framework to make sure that you can embed those skills into the curriculum programs, and that teachers are working to deliver that to the students. Which raises the second challenge, and one that comes out of the K-12 Horizon reports. And as we've said here, it's consistently reported that there is the importance of digital literacy as a key skill. And what is coming out is that there is a lack of capability in staff to be able to deliver that. Digital literacy is not a pre-service training program or component. It is dependent on teachers undertaking further professional learning to develop those skills. So that's a crucial element. The third challenge we've indicated here is authentic learning. That needs to be evident, that students need to be focusing on real-world complex problems and solutions by various examples, and engaging in projects and challenge-based learning and inquiry-based learning and problem-based learning to engage in authentic learning. And then the other one we've got is grit skills, that teachers endeavour to address the future skills. There also needs to be these other skills, the grit skills. Now the grit skills are things like resilience and tenacity, stickability, staying with it until you've actually got the job done. This Learning Spaces challenge is the one that I've looked at during this particular webinar. So the fourth challenge is about designing learning spaces to support the development of future skills, and that's what I focused on specifically for this particular webinar. Finally, we look at flexibility as a challenge. That is the ability of the systems and structures of education to be able to be responsive to the change that's needed, so that skills that students need for their work readiness and their work preparedness. In this document there's also lots of other links and references that you can go to. They're all hyperlinked there for you. So there's 2 pages of that. That's the first page, and then on the second page there are more links. So that report is available to you, and this is where you will be able to find that. The link is from our blog on our EduWebinar site. So if you've don't manage to get that down, go to our blog and look for Learning and Literacy for the Future, and that's where you'll get access to the article. So in closing, make sure that you download your certificate of attendance. You'll find that there is a link below, and if you click on that, that's where you'll be able to get access to your certificate of attendance for this broadcast. Also, to check out our other events through going to our webinar page and follow us within our social spaces, as we're constantly, pretty well on a daily basis, providing access to other material and resources that support you in your educational context. Here's my email too, in case you want to contact me about following through on some of the content from this webinar, or whether you want to just ask some questions. So I hope that you have been able to pick up some key ideas, some key thoughts that you will be able to follow through after this broadcast, and I look forward to seeing you again online soon at a future webinar event.